All right, students, so here is certainly the value of the internet as we've seen it, and that is communication and communication services. I remember back in the day, I am so bloody old. I remember when communication was either passing a note in class confidentially and maybe even, using some encryption, so if the teacher happened to catch you, he or she wouldn't be able to read what the message said, right? So passing a note, talking to each other. Remember that, when we'd actually have to talk to each other? Or in my house, pick up the phone and call. However, we had two phones. One was in my parents' office. I wasn't allowed to use that one. I had to use the one in the kitchen, so all of my conversations were not private. And of course today, kids today have text messaging, they have Snapchat, they have all of these ways to communicate privately. And I'm not convinced that that's such a good deal with young, undeveloped minds. However, it is the way they're communicating. And I'm not going to get into how you parent your children. So let's just get going with this idea. Components for electronic communication. No longer do we need to talk to each other. We can send a quick text message that says what we need to say. And boy, if it's a joke, we put a emoticon behind it to express how we feel. But remember, we're taking away a lot of the great components of communication, one of which is tone, timing, tone, and tact. So, would it be appropriate for me to say, wow, your homework really sucked? There's some timing, tone, and tact that may not be appropriate, if you get my example. So it is the weekend. Hey, I'm a little crazy. So you can pause through these objectives here. Words to know. You've got the information within Blackboard for definitions for all of these things, and we'll just get started. So electronic communication, of course, is technology that transmits text, numbers, voice, and video from one computing device to another. Just look at Snapchat. That can be a picture, that can be a video, with associated text, with associated numbers, whatever the case may be. It does require a user agent, which is software application, such as email or a text messaging software, or an instant messaging program, for example. The sender is the computer sending the information, and the receiver, of course, is the one that's receiving the message. We use a bunch of different protocols to do this. For example, with email, we use a protocol called SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, as well as POP, Plain Old Postal, which basically POP email was the first email we had. And the thing with POP email was it could be sent and then received. So SMTP is also used in there. Two protocols basically used for email. And certain ports, port 110 for POP, I think, and port 25 for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So we'll get more into ports when we talk about firewalls. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time with this. Most of you know what email is. You know what instant messaging is. Feel free to pause as we go through this. I'm sure you all know what text messaging is, and voice over IP is simply voice over internet protocol. So an example of that would be that I fire up my little Skype application here, and through the Skype application, I can either text a message via text. I can come in and configure my camera and my microphone. I can use Google Chat, for example, Google Video, and communicate with all of the mechanisms that we have when we're standing or sitting face to face across a table. You can see my voice, you can see my face, sorry, you can see my voice. You can see my face, you can see my facial function as we communicate. You can hear my voice versus just having the message in plain text. Online conferencing, video conferencing, again, and a great way to do it because it adds a lot of the components needed for effective communication. What does my face look like as I'm saying, hey, yeah, your homework, wow, it just really sucked. Or, wow, that was great homework. And maybe my face is telling you a different story. Chat rooms, not as much of those anymore. We tend to be more focused on individual chat, not group chat. Chat rooms, everybody could see what everybody was typing. whereas now it tends to be more one-on-one communication. Social networking sites, of course, Facebook has its own communication mechanism in it. A blog for communicating ideas. Vlogs, for example. So video logs, one of the ones that I follow. Let me just bring this up real quick. I'll go into YouTube. And if I start typing Casey N, we get to Casey Neistat. So this is one of the vloggers of the year. So Casey Neistat does a daily vlog. Pretty interesting stuff that he does. He does a lot of technical stuff on drones and other things. He includes his family, flying to St. Barts, New York City, etc. Pretty interesting guy. He's definitely involved in technology. So I follow his vlog now and again, mostly when it's something of interest to me, like drones or how he's photographing or doing video, etc. Message boards and news groups. Well, being in technology, I definitely use news groups. An example of that would be the Microsoft community news groups. If you notice, there's a bunch of different categories. Let me go ahead and I'll click on Windows here real quick. Notice Windows 10, Windows 8, 7, all versions. So if I want information on Windows 10, I can come in here. I can ask questions of the group. I can sign in and ask the community questions. I can also ask a virtual agent, which basically is simply searching through the results, finding subsequent topics. Here's one. I'm running Windows 10. It's installed on a long time, and the automatic Windows update have been installed. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my issue. And then, of course, people can write back, need an answer, how many views, how many replies. So I can click on this and go through. I can search this based on categories, version, whatever the case may be, and find answers that I need that are probably more reliable because they're on a Microsoft community site. So news groups are available for tons of things. When I was involved in aviation, there was aviation news groups. Of course, the most common communication, email communication. So whether you're using Microsoft, Windows Live Mail, Google Gmail. So let's go back out here. Got a Google account. The cool thing is I can manage multiple email accounts. So here's my personal email here. I just click on it. I save my passwords using a password vault. I don't save them in the browser, folks. I don't save them on the computer. I have to log into the vault in order to get these things to work each time I log into my computer. But then I can log into my account. It's online. I have it via my phone, and I can go through and do wonderful things via email. Of course, I need credentials, a username and password. I highly suggest that if you are using, I'm going to close this, if you're using online email and there's multiple levels of authentication, use it. What I mean by that is I save my credentials on my local computer, but if I happen to access my Gmail over a computer that I haven't used before, it's going to send a 6-digit number. It's going to text a 6-digit number to my phone. So although I've put in my username and my password, I also need to have this 6-digit number anytime I'm accessing my Gmail from a new computing device that Gmail doesn't recognize. This keeps my Gmail secure, and today it's very important because I may be sending personal information, bank information, credit card information through my Gmail account. Never out. I never give my credit card, social security number, anything like that out through an email. I always call with that. But my credit card company might send me a statement, for example, or my bank might send me an email that my statement is ready. So what makes it work, of course, is the @ sign. So in front of that is going to be my unique address at some domain name. So at gmail.com, for example. And as we know, there's just a ton of domain names. I have a domain called Master IT in Minutes. And I have an email out there as well, Eric at masteritnminutes.com. So that could be a company type thing. Microsoft Outlook, of course, versatile office application. Most of us are used to using this, whether it be this is the client installed on my computer, or it could be something web-based. That's how you all get into your mail, right? For COCC, as you go out to the COCC website and you get into the Outlook web access, which is a web-based interface access for your email. We have things like contacts, address books, scheduling, calendar, adding tasks. That's one thing that I've demonstrated on my phone. I constantly need reminders for stuff. I don't carry around a pen and paper, so now on my Google phone, I just say, okay, Google, set a reminder for 8 p.m. to pick up my daughter from her friend's house, or whatever the case may be. I don't need a calendar event for that necessarily. It's a one-time thing, and it's not a future thing. So I just set a reminder. My phone goes off and says, hey, dummy, don't forget to pick up your daughter in case I'm busy. So as we explore Outlook and features, let me pause. I just said, okay, Google, and my phone, which is sitting across the room, is now talking to me. Hold on. I wish you all could see this on my phone. As I said that, it created a reminder. Pick up my daughter from her friend's house, or whatever time case may be, 8 p.m. That is just absolutely silly. All right, getting back to the lecture. As we look at Outlook, Outlook should look familiar to you all. So I've brought up my little junk mail filter here. You know, we have tabs just like we have in the other Windows applications. You know, if we want features and functionalities for sending and receiving, folders, what views that I want, things like that. From the home page, I can do a new email. I'm going to bring up a new email here, and we'll talk about this more in detail in just a minute. So let's go back to the back to our presentation here. We can see we can create folder structures for classes, for certain things that we want, rules to send emails to certain places. We definitely want to manage email. I don't tend to do a good job of managing my email, and the reason being because the search features have gotten so good these days that I don't have to read the junk mail. It remains unread, but if I'm looking for a topic, I just search through my email and I find it. Now, some people are really good about archiving and deleting emails that just don't matter. I only do that when I start running out of space. I'll go in and right click, show me all emails that are junk, and then I delete all of those, for example. So creating, saving an email message. Let's look at these concepts here real quick. If I bring up a new email, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller just so we can kind of look at it here. So here is a new email, and I'm ready to type in some pertinent information so that I can send this email. Now, if you notice, I have a signature here. It tells you who I am. It gives you my current office hours, right? Now, a couple things. Number one, an email always needs a subject, and a subject should be very detailed. This email subject should be detailed. It doesn't need to list the whole thing. That's what the body of the email, here's the body of the email would describe. However, make sure that subject is something that would compel someone to open up and read the email. Make sure, if it's something that sounds like it might be spammy, but I'm sending it, I will actually come in here and say from Eric Magidson. So people that know me know that I do this so that they know this isn't some hoax that's being forwarded or I got a virus that's forwarding something. It's coming from me. So there's, a basic email. Let's talk about the to, the CC, and the BCC. The to is going to be the primary recipient of the email. The CC is going to be a carbon copy, someone that I want to carbon copy. So I'm just going to go in right now actually and use Ralph Phillips, a fellow instructor. And let's say I also want Dan Alberghetti to see this email as well. So I'm going to address it to Ralph. Okay, so to Ralph, and then whatever the body of the message is. And Dan is not addressed here, but I just want him to know about this email that I sent. This works really well. Now, a blind carbon copy is different. So I'm going to go in and I'll choose Carson Hari, for example, and Carson is going to get a blind carbon copy. What that means is Carson's going to receive the email, but Ralph and Dan are not going to see that he received the email. And this works very well for things. Let me give you an example of this. Let's say I have a bunch of people. I can actually send an email without a to. I can send it without a CC, for example. I can use blind carbon copy and send it to many people who are only going to see that they received the email. They're not going to see the other people who may also have received the email. So the email here might be, dear person or dear tenant, whatever, your rent is late. So I send out a bulk email that goes to 50 people who haven't yet paid their rent. Your rent is late. Don't forget you now need a late charge. You need to submit it by a certain day. But the nice thing is they're only going to see that they received the email. So imagine, I'll give you a quick example. Back in the day when email hoaxes were prevalent, someone at Deschutes County sent me an email hoax, and they had also sent it to everyone else in their contact list. So 155 people got an email that said, hey, be careful. A bunch of terrorists stole UPS, S-T-O-L-E, UPS uniforms. Okay, so, here it was. I can't type and talk at the stolen UPS uniforms. It was a hoax. It wasn't true. She just wasted 150 people's time. Well, she put it in the to column, which meant I got to reply to everyone because I saw that it went to all 155 people and say, I looked this up. Here is a link to an internet site that says this is a hoax. Quit wasting our time. Quit sending these messages that are just simply not true. That's what an email hoax is. So there's some examples of proper ways to use the to, why use the carbon copy, and why use the blind carbon copy. In professional work, I use the carbon copy a lot. It may be something like, I gave a raise to an employee and I CC'd the human resource department or accounting department so that they could associate that with the person's paycheck. Creating and saving email messages, more about that. There's two types of email that we use. Hypertext markup language, which is, remember, the language of the web. So it allows us color and bold and font and graphics and things like that. That tends to be the default today for sending messages so that we can use all those cool tools to make our email look better. Or plain text. An example of that would be, an email where we just have fonts, in which case when we send a new email, we use things like asterisks and underlines to bring highlight to an email. So depends on what you use. Of course, if we're using HTML, the email file is going to be much larger. Attaching and sending files, we know about those. Most of us know today that we can't send like a .exe or an executable file via an attachment. It normally will get removed by antivirus software or by the default email servers themselves. You can add a tag to a message header to indicate the message is high or low priority. Folks, I just would ask, consider that if you constantly are sending things with a high priority, pretty soon people think you're crying wolf and your high priority messages become low priority. And then when you have a high priority message, it's not going to be given the same, priority that you would think. So use priority when it's due. If it's something like, hey, you can look at this later, use the low priority. If you're sending something that isn't mission critical, that doesn't need to be responded within 24 hours, go ahead and use that low priority. Let people know you care about their time, for example. So sometimes email messages bounce back. The reason they do that most of the time is that we put the address in incorrectly, whatever the case may be. The mailbox is full. The recipient has blocked messages from you, whatever the case may be. Maybe you upset them. They've blocked you. You're going to get the response back, hey, it can't be delivered. The recipient's security settings reject attachments, with executable programs, like I said. Opening email, pretty easy. You just double click on the email and it opens up. A lot of times we need to click up here and say show pictures. So our email client may not download pictures by default because that takes data, especially on our phones. So we have to click and get those pictures that make the email look presentable. So here's the thing with email, folks. Don't trust any email. Yeah, I said it. I mean it. Don't trust any email. Always be thinking, does this email have an attachment that I shouldn't be opening? Is this email from a person I'm expecting an email from? Remember that even today, email boxes and client computers can be hacked into, or malicious software can be installed that sends messages, marketing messages, or trying to infect your computer through another computer. So even if you get a message from someone you know and it's got an attachment and you're not expecting an attachment, folks, don't open them. It's that simple. Always be thinking about that, because the next thing you know, you could be apologizing to everyone in your contact list, and some people are going to be really mad if suddenly your infected computer sent them an email, they went ahead and opened it up, and they got infected too. Now today, that's really their own responsibility. But keep in mind, if this is someone who's not using computers and email on a regular basis, they might get suckered into clicking that attachment and infecting their computer themselves. So, you can search via keywords. You can search from who it's from. Great search tools today for email. That red exclamation point icon indicates to the sender that the message is urgent. We've just talked about that. Use it, but don't abuse it. Most of you know what spam is, and I'm not talking about that delicious Hawaiian meat in a can that we throw a piece of pineapple on, stick it between two buns, barbecue it up. Well, barbecue it. Stick the pineapple on there, stick it between two buns, and eat it. This, of course, is unsolicited email. And remember, sometimes spam can come from people you know, okay, who think it's funny to forward it, or think everyone needs to know about certain things within the internet, whatever the case may be. Keep in mind, if you start getting spammed a lot of information that you're not going to read and consume, it's perfectly acceptable to go back to that person and say, hey, as you think about sending this thing about the striped tiger in Indonesia, man, I'm just not interested. Go ahead and send that to your other friends that might be, but quit spamming my inbox. A lot of spam today is from people we know. Email attachments, of course. Be careful with email attachments. Even Microsoft Word documents have been infected with macros and other things, and as you open them up, they can infect your computer. You can print attachments and documents. I don't necessarily suggest it. By the way, you can also right-click on an attachment, save it down to your computer, and then delete the email. So attachments fill up email quickly. They're huge files. So we can save them, or we can even delete the attachment without deleting the body of the email. When we reply, we can reply to all. We can reply to just the one person who sent it. So make sure you're replying to the right people. You've seen an example of a signature. For you students, I would suggest a signature that lists your first name, that lists your COCC email, and then also lists, hey, I'm a candidate to graduate from the nursing program at COCC, if that's what you're in, or, currently studying network administration at COCC. That way, as you send out emails, people are like, oh yeah, I remember who that person is. We can set rules for auto-responding. So things like when I'm out of the office, I can have a rule that says, hey, I'm out of the office. I would be very careful with this, folks. We can also now send rules for people that are in the same domain as us. So I can have an email that says, hey, I'm out of the office on vacation for a week, and I let everybody in the office know that. But anybody that's sending me email from outside of my business, it just might say, I'm unavailable to read email for the next week. But here's a contact of someone internally that you can get a hold of and continue to do business. I do not expect, the idea of setting these on your personal email account. Hey, I'm not going to check email for a week. Well, that says I'm gone. And keep in mind that that also tells people you're not at home. So that's something to consider. Redirecting messages. I have rules. That's why you all put CIS 120, all caps, all together. Those emails don't get stuck in my crazy inbox they go to specific folders that I check first for emails from students. So if in the 8th week here you're not putting those subject lines in, that may be why your email's not getting answered in a timely manner, or may not be getting answered at all, is because you're not following the rules that I need to make that an efficient process. Again, cleaning up folders, we can archive email to where we can save it, we can export it. What I do at the end of every term is I take all of those class folders for the term, I grab them all, I export them into an Outlook file so that I can go back and look at those. If a student comes back and says, no, I sent you that and I should have passed the class, but maybe you didn't see it or whatever, I can go back and check those emails. So creating appropriate messages, a fast-paced media used for electronic communications demands a unique writing style. Keep in mind, folks, it's still professional communication. Use grammar. Yes, you text your friends with all the shortcuts, but when you're in a business, send an appropriate business email. It's no different than when we used to type up business communications. They need to be professional. They need to have the correct language for the audience. So, I've actually gotten emails from students, yo, bro, : I'm just checking on something. What do you, no, that just doesn't work, Refer to people the way you would want to be referred to and respect them. Now, something to keep in mind, one thing that I do, I'll come up here, I'll grab a new email real quick. Let me go ahead and minimize this. And if it's something that has a challenging subject, let's say I'm responding to a student who, I need to be really careful with my words. They challenge me with a subject. I just, I'm having a bad day, bad mood. My rule is I don't fill out the 2, because what's next? I'm going to hit the send button when I'm done. I'm a creature of habit. A lot of times, folks, I will compose an email, let it sit in my drafts for 24 hours before I send it. This has created a lot less drama in my life. I might even therapeutically type the email I'd like to send and then go back and delete it, but I don't put anything here. I can fill out a subject, but if there's no recipient and I accidentally hit the send button, it's going to say, we need to know who you're sending this to. And I go, oh, phew, I didn't want to send that anyway, so I just wanted to type it. I got to say what I wanted to say. I feel better. I delete it, and off it goes. So, create electronic trails with documentations, discussions. Today, if we reply to an email, we'll see that history of who said what, when, how, etc. Before you click send, make sure you're sending the message to the right people. Proofread, check for spelling, check grammar. Today Microsoft Outlook uses the same spell checker and grammar checker that we have in Word and all those other programs, so wonderful to use. Save the message overnight as a draft. That's what I recommend, especially if it's challenging. Here's your summary. I'll go through the summary real quick so that you can pause and make sure we covered all this material. And that, folks, is it for lesson 26. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I'll see you soon. Take care.